People like to believe that every tragedy begins with one terrible decision. In reality, most disasters start with something much smaller. A lie, a secret, a promise made to the wrong person, or a warning ignored. Looking back, Emily Carter often wondered if everything had started months before the accident, or if the moment she walked into that strange little shop on the edge of town had already sealed her fate. At 35, Emily believed she had built the kind of life most people dreamed about. She and her husband, Ryan, had been married for 12 years. They lived in a quiet neighborhood outside Portland, Oregon, where every house looked almost identical and every family pretended everything was perfect. Together they were raising 2 boys. 11-year-old Noah was obsessed with astronomy and could name every constellation in the night sky. 8-year-old Ethan never stopped asking questions and somehow managed to turn every ordinary afternoon into an adventure. Emily loved watching them grow. No matter how difficult life became, hearing them laugh reminded her what truly mattered. Lately, though, something had changed. Ryan still kissed her goodbye every morning. He still asked about her day. He still smiled. But none of it felt real anymore. The warmth was gone. Dinner conversations became shorter. Late-night talks disappeared completely. Instead, Ryan buried himself in work. Sometimes he didn't come home until after midnight. Other nights he sat on the couch staring at his laptop without saying a word. Whenever Emily asked if something was wrong, his answer never changed. "I'm just exhausted." She wanted to believe him. She really did. But wives notice things. The long pauses before answering simple questions. The distracted look in someone's eyes. The feeling that they're physically present, but emotionally somewhere else. Emily wasn't afraid that Ryan had stopped loving her. She was afraid that something, or someone, was slowly pulling him away. One Friday evening she decided to surprise him with dinner at his office. She packed his favorite meal from the Italian restaurant where they had celebrated every anniversary. When she arrived, the building was almost empty. Only a few lights were still on. Ryan wasn't in his office. As she walked down the hallway, she heard voices coming from a conference room. One voice belonged to Ryan. The other belonged to his business partner, Marcus Reed. Emily couldn't hear every word. Only fragments. Insurance. It has to happen soon. There's no turning back now. Then silence. A second later the conference room door opened. Emily stepped away before anyone noticed her. Ryan eventually appeared carrying a stack of folders. He looked surprised to see her. "Em? What are you doing here?" She forced a smile. "I thought you forgot to eat." For just a second, she saw guilt flash across his face. Or maybe fear. She couldn't tell which. That night she barely slept. The conversation replayed inside her mind over and over again. Insurance. Soon. No turning back. She tried convincing herself they were discussing business. Nothing more. Till something felt terribly wrong. The following afternoon Emily drove across town to meet her friend Lisa for coffee. Lisa listened patiently before asking the question Emily had been avoiding. "Do you think Ryan's cheating?" Emily stared into her coffee. "I don't know. And if he isn't, then something even worse is happening." Lisa hesitated. Then she quietly slid a small business card across the table. Emily frowned. "What is this?" "I know you're going to think I've lost my mind." "I already do." Lisa laughed nervously. "My cousin went to this woman last year." "A therapist?" Lisa shook her head. "No." Emily looked at the card again. There was no company logo. No address. Only a name. Evelyn Ashcroft. And beneath it, "Some truths reveal themselves only when you're willing to pay the price." Emily almost laughed. And said, she slipped the card into her purse. Mostly to prove she'd never use it. 3 days later, she parked outside an old Victorian house hidden behind towering cedar trees. She still wasn't sure why she'd come. Maybe curiosity. Maybe desperation. Or maybe because deep inside, she already knew her life was changing. The woman who opened the door looked nothing like Emily expected. She wasn't wearing black robes. There were no candles. No crystal ball. She looked like an ordinary grandmother. Silver hair. Kind smile. Soft eyes. "You've already seen it, haven't you?" the old woman asked before Emily spoke. Emily froze. "Seen what?" "The future." I don't know what you're talking about. The old woman simply stepped aside. You will. The house smelled of cedar wood and dried herbs. Every clock inside had stopped. None showed the same time. Emily noticed that immediately. Why don't they work? They do. They just refuse to measure human time. Emily suddenly wished she'd never come. She almost left. Then Evelyn placed an old deck of worn cards onto the table. Before we begin, she said quietly, I need you to answer one question. Emily nodded. If I show you the truth, will you try to change it? Of course. The old woman's expression changed. For the first time, she looked genuinely afraid. That's exactly what worries me. Emily frowned. What does that mean? Instead of answering, Evelyn turned over the first card. Then the second. Then the third. The room became strangely cold. The candles flickered. Outside, the wind disappeared. Evelyn slowly looked up. Her face had turned completely pale. No. Emily felt her heartbeat quicken. What? The old woman whispered only 4 words. They're already watching you. At that exact moment, someone knocked on the front door. Slowly. 3 times. Even though Evelyn hadn't expected anyone. And somehow, she already knew who, or what was standing outside. The knocking came again. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Not loud. Not impatient. Just certain. Emily turned toward the front door, expecting Evelyn to answer it. Instead, the old woman remained frozen in place. The color had drained from her face. Don't move, she whispered. Another knock echoed through the house. Emily glanced toward the narrow window beside the door. No one was there. The front porch was empty. The rain had started again, tapping softly against the glass, but there wasn't a single person standing outside. You said someone was here, Emily whispered. They are. I don't see anyone. That's because they're not here for you. Emily's stomach tightened. Then who are they here for? Evelyn didn't answer immediately. Instead, she carefully gathered the old cards from the table, wrapped them in a faded black cloth, and placed them inside a wooden box. Only then did she finally speak. Sometimes the future doesn't like being discovered. Emily frowned. What does that even mean? It means every choice has a price. Most people never learn what that price is because they never look ahead. And if they do? Evelyn looked toward the front door once more. The future begins looking back. Emily left the house nearly an hour later. She felt foolish. Nothing supernatural had happened. No ghosts. No magic. Only strange warnings and cryptic conversations. Yet one sentence refused to leave her mind. They're already watching you. As she pulled into her driveway, Ryan was unloading groceries from his truck. He smiled when he saw her. Hey. She smiled back. For a moment everything felt normal again. Maybe she had imagined all of it. Maybe stress had simply gotten the better of her. Then she noticed Marcus. Ryan's business partner stood near the garage talking on his phone. The moment he saw Emily looking at him, he ended the call. Too quickly. He walked over wearing his usual confident smile. Emily. Marcus. We've been stealing your husband from you lately. Ryan laughed awkwardly. She's already giving me a hard time about that. Marcus grinned. Just a few more weeks. Emily noticed something strange. His smile reached his mouth, but never his eyes. That night Ryan couldn't sleep. Emily woke around 2 in the morning and found his side of the bed empty. She walked downstairs. The office light was on. Ryan sat at his desk surrounded by financial reports. His hands were shaking. You okay? He slammed one folder shut before she could see it. Yeah. You've said yeah a lot lately. He sighed. The company's under pressure. I thought business was doing well. It was. What changed? Ryan hesitated. Finally he answered. I trusted the wrong person. Emily wanted to ask if he meant Marcus. Before she could speak, Ryan's phone rang. His expression changed the moment he saw the caller. Marcus. I have to take this. It's 2 in the morning. I know. Ryan walked outside before answering. Emily watched through the kitchen window. The conversation lasted less than a minute. When Ryan came back inside, he looked even worse. What happened? Marcus needs me downtown. Now. It's important. Emily grabbed his arm. It can wait until morning. Ryan gently pulled away. No, it can't. An hour later, Emily was alone. She tried reading. She tried watching television. Nothing distracted her. Finally, she remembered something. Ryan had forgotten his tablet on the kitchen counter. She wasn't the type of wife who searched through private messages. She had always respected his privacy. Tonight, something told her she shouldn't. She entered the passcode. The screen unlocked. At first, everything looked ordinary. Emails, invoices, construction contracts. Then she noticed a folder hidden behind several financial documents. It wasn't password protected. Inside were scanned insurance policies. Life insurance, home insurance, business insurance. Every policy had been updated within the last month. One number immediately caught her attention. $20 million. Beneficiary, Reed and Carter Holdings. Marcus's company. Emily frowned. Why would Marcus benefit if something happened to Ryan? Before she could think further, another notification appeared. A text message. Marcus. Everything has to happen before the audit. Once the house is empty, no one will ask questions. Emily's blood ran cold. Another message appeared beneath it. Delete these after reading. She scrolled further. Most messages had already been erased. Only fragments remained. Electrical fire. Family schedule. Accident if necessary. Emily stopped breathing. No, this couldn't be real. Marcus wasn't planning fraud. He was planning murder. Her hands trembled as she grabbed her car keys. Ryan still hadn't returned. She needed to warn him. She dialed his phone. Straight to voicemail. Again. Nothing. She climbed into her SUV and started driving toward the office. Rain poured across the windshield. Visibility was terrible. Her heart pounded harder with every mile. Then, her dashboard clock flickered. 12:12. The radio switched on by itself. Only static. Then a woman's voice. Soft. Almost impossible to hear. Turn around. Emily froze. What? The voice came again. Go back. The radio suddenly went silent. Emily shook her head. I'm imagining things. She pressed harder on the accelerator. A pair of headlights suddenly appeared through the rain. Too close. Far too close. A pickup truck had crossed the center line. Emily jerked the steering wheel. The world exploded into glass, metal, and darkness. She opened her eyes. Everything was silent. No pain. No rain. No sound at all. Her SUV lay upside down 30 feet away. Emergency lights flashed in the distance. People were running toward the wreck. Emily stumbled forward. I'm here. Nobody reacted. She reached a police officer. He walked straight through her. Confused, she looked toward the crushed driver's seat. Someone was still trapped inside. A woman. Dark hair. Blood across her forehead. Emily took one more step. Then another. Until she could finally see the face. Her own. She stared at herself for what felt like forever. No. Someone gently spoke behind her. I was hoping you wouldn't arrive this soon. Emily slowly turned around. Standing beneath the falling rain, perfectly dry, was Evelyn. The old woman looked at her with deep sadness. I told you there would be a price. Emily's voice barely existed anymore. No. This isn't happening. Evelyn nodded. I'm afraid. It already has. Emily couldn't stop staring at the wreckage. Paramedics surrounded what was left of her SUV, working frantically as hydraulic tools screamed against twisted steel. Red and blue lights reflected across the rain-soaked pavement, turning the highway into a blur of flashing color. She kept telling herself it was a mistake, a nightmare, some kind of hallucination. I'm alive, she whispered. I have to be. No one answered. She stepped toward one of the paramedics, grabbing his arm. Her hand passed straight through him. Emily stumbled backward. Her breath caught in her throat. No. A white sheet was carefully pulled over the body inside the vehicle. The world suddenly felt impossibly quiet. Even the rain seemed distant. Evelyn stood several feet away, watching without saying a word. Emily turned toward her, tears streaming down her face. You knew. I knew there was danger. You knew I would die. Evelyn lowered her eyes. I saw possibilities. I never see certainties. Emily's voice cracked. Then why didn't you stop me? I tried. No. You gave me riddles. Because no one believes the truth when it's spoken to clearly. Emily shook her head. My boys. They'll think I abandoned them. They'll think I never came home. They need me. Evelyn stepped closer. They still do. Emily looked up. What does that mean? The old woman's expression became serious. Death isn't always the end of a promise. The funeral took place 4 days later. Emily stood beneath the towering oak trees overlooking the cemetery, invisible to everyone around her. She watched neighbors hug Ryan. Friends offered condolences. Her parents cried quietly in the front row. Noah refused to let go of his younger brother's hand. Ethan kept looking around as if expecting his mother to walk through the cemetery gates and explain that everything had been a terrible misunderstanding. Emily tried to hold him, to brush the tears from his face, to tell him she was still there. Her arms passed through him like cold air. I love you, she whispered. I love you so much. Ethan suddenly looked over his shoulder. For a brief second, it almost seemed as though he had heard her. But the moment passed. Ryan stood in front of the casket long after everyone else had walked away. His shoulders trembled. Emily had seen her husband cry only once before, the day his father died. This was different. He looked broken. I'm sorry, he whispered to the coffin. I should have been with you. Emily closed her eyes. It wasn't your fault. But he couldn't hear her. Days turned into nights. Nights turned into more silence. Emily discovered that time no longer felt normal. Sometimes hours disappeared in an instant. Other times a single minute felt endless. She also realized something stranger. She couldn't travel wherever she wanted. Certain places pulled her back. The family home, the accident site, and Ryan. Whenever he was in danger, she felt an invisible force drawing her toward him. It wasn't a choice. It was instinct. Almost like a heartbeat she no longer possessed. One evening Ryan stayed late at the office again. Emily followed him. Marcus was already waiting. The office building was empty except for the two partners. Ryan tossed a folder onto the conference table. I'm done. Marcus leaned back in his chair. What does that mean? It means I'm selling my share. Marcus smiled. No. I'm not asking. You don't understand. Ryan's voice hardened. I've been looking through our financial records. So have I. There are accounts I never approved. Marcus didn't react. There are shell companies. Silence. There are missing millions. Still nothing. Finally Marcus stood. You always were too honest. Ryan stared at him. What did you say? You heard me. Marcus slowly walked toward the window overlooking the city. You know what your problem has always been? You think rules matter. You think people win by playing fair. Ryan's jaw tightened. And you think murder solves everything? Marcus froze. Only for a fraction of a second. Then he smiled again. I don't know what you're talking about. Emily felt a chill spread through her. He wasn't surprised. Not even a little. Later that night Marcus made a phone call from the parking garage. Emily followed. He couldn't see her. Couldn't hear her. But she heard every word. It's becoming a problem. A pause. No. He doesn't suspect everything yet. Another pause. I'll finish it before the auditors arrive. Emily's heart sank. Finish it. He wasn't talking about paperwork. He was talking about Ryan. She rushed back to Evelyn's house. The front door opened before she reached it. I was wondering when you'd come. You can see me. I've always been able to. Emily stepped inside. I know who's behind everything. I assumed you would. You have to help me. Evelyn slowly shook her head. I can't interfere. You already did. I warned you. And it wasn't enough. The old woman remained silent for several moments. Finally she walked toward an old bookshelf and removed a weathered leather journal. She placed it on the table. There are rules. Emily frowned. What rules? The dead cannot change the living world directly. Then how am I supposed to save my family? You'll need someone who still belongs to it. Emily looked confused. What are you saying? Evelyn opened the journal. Inside were dozens of handwritten names, each one crossed out. Every restless soul eventually finds an anchor. An anchor. A living person capable of seeing what others cannot. Emily remembered something. The woman from the accident. Evelyn nodded. The one whose child survived. She crossed the boundary between life and death. For a few seconds. That was enough. Emily felt hope for the first time since dying. So she can see me? If she accepts what she's seen. And if she doesn't? Evelyn closed the journal. Then your family will face Marcus alone. Across town in a small apartment, a young single mother named Sarah Collins sat awake beside her 6-year-old daughter. The little girl had finally fallen asleep after another nightmare. Sarah hadn't slept much herself since the accident. Every night she dreamed about the same woman. Dark hair, kind eyes, standing silently in the rain. Watching, waiting. Sarah kept telling herself it was trauma. Survivor's guilt. Nothing more. Then the bedroom lights flickered. The room suddenly became cold. A soft voice echoed from the hallway, barely louder than a whisper. Sarah. She froze. The voice came again. I need your help. Sarah slowly turned toward the open doorway. A woman stood there, drenched from the rain, her clothes stained with blood. And yet, her eyes were filled with desperation rather than fear. Emily had finally found someone who could see her. Sarah couldn't move. Every instinct told her to run, to grab her daughter and get out of the apartment. But her legs refused to obey. The woman standing in the hallway wasn't smiling. She wasn't threatening her. She simply looked heartbroken. For several long seconds, neither of them spoke. Finally, Sarah found her voice. I've seen you before. Emily nodded. At the accident. Sarah swallowed hard. You were driving the SUV. I was. But you died. Emily lowered her eyes. I know. Sarah shook her head, backing away. This isn't real. I'm losing my mind. No, Emily said softly. You're one of the few people who can still see beyond it. Sarah covered her ears. Stop. I don't want this. I didn't want it either. The next morning, Sarah convinced herself it had all been a nightmare. A stress-induced hallucination. Nothing more. She packed lunch for her daughter, Lily, walked her to school, and forced herself to focus on ordinary life. Normal felt safe. Normal made sense. As she left the school parking lot, her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered anyway. Hello. Silence. Then, a woman's voice. Don't take Maple Street. Sarah froze. Who's this? The line went dead. She stared at the phone. Coincidence? It had to be. So, instead of taking her usual route home, she turned onto another road. 10 minutes later, traffic came to a complete stop. Police cars blocked the intersection ahead. A gas truck had collided with 3 vehicles on Maple Street. One driver had died instantly. Sarah's hands began to shake. The voice. It had been Emily. That evening Sarah returned to Evelyn's house. She hadn't planned to. In fact, she didn't even know how she'd found it. It was as if something had quietly guided her there. Evelyn opened the door before Sarah knocked. I've been expecting you. Sarah stared at her. You know who I am? I know why you're here. I need answers. You need courage. Sarah stepped inside. I saw a dead woman. Yes. She spoke to me. Yes. She saved my life. Evelyn nodded. And now she hopes you'll save someone else's. Emily stood silently in the corner of the room. She couldn't touch anything. Couldn't move objects. Couldn't even make a sound unless Sarah allowed herself to listen. It felt strange, as if belief itself had become a doorway. The more Sarah accepted Emily's presence, the stronger Emily became. Evelyn noticed it too. I was. But you died. Emily lowered her eyes. I know. Sarah shook her head, backing away. This isn't real. I'm losing my mind. No, Emily said softly. You're one of the few people who can still see beyond it. Sarah covered her ears. Stop. I don't want this. I didn't want it either. The next morning, Sarah convinced herself it had all been a nightmare. A stress-induced hallucination. Nothing more. She packed lunch for her daughter, Lily, walked her to school, and forced herself to focus on ordinary life. Normal felt safe. Normal made sense. As she left the school parking lot, her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered anyway. Hello. Silence. Then, a woman's voice. Don't take Maple Street. Sarah froze. Who's this? The line went dead. She stared at the phone. Coincidence? It had to be. So, instead of taking her usual route home, she turned onto another road. 10 minutes later, traffic came to a complete stop. Police cars blocked the intersection ahead. A gas truck had collided with 3 vehicles on Maple Street. One driver had died instantly. Sarah's hands began to shake. The voice. It had been Emily. That evening Sarah returned to Evelyn's house. She hadn't planned to. In fact, she didn't even know how she'd found it. It was as if something had quietly guided her there. Evelyn opened the door before Sarah knocked. I've been expecting you. Sarah stared at her. You know who I am? I know why you're here. I need answers. You need courage. Sarah stepped inside. I saw a dead woman. Yes. She spoke to me. Yes. She saved my life. Evelyn nodded. And now she hopes you'll save someone else's. Emily stood silently in the corner of the room. She couldn't touch anything. Couldn't move objects. Couldn't even make a sound unless Sarah allowed herself to listen. It felt strange, as if belief itself had become a doorway. The more Sarah accepted Emily's presence, the stronger Emily became. Evelyn noticed it too. For the first time, Marcus's smile disappeared. Neither man noticed Emily standing between them. She watched every expression, every hesitation, every lie. Marcus wasn't grieving. He wasn't guilty. He was calculating, watching, measuring Ryan's reactions, planning his next move. That night Sarah couldn't sleep. Emily appeared again. Only this time she looked different. Fainter. Less solid. What's happening to you? Sarah asked. Emily looked down at her own hands. They had become almost transparent. I don't have much time. What do you mean? I can feel myself fading. Sarah's heart sank. Can Evelyn stop it? Emily shook her head. The longer I'm here, the harder it becomes. So what happens if you disappear? Emily didn't answer. She didn't have to. Sarah already knew. Ryan would never learn the truth. Marcus would walk free. And 2 little boys would grow up believing their mother's death had simply been a tragic accident. No, Sarah whispered. There has to be another way. Emily looked at her with quiet hope. There is. What? You. The next morning Sarah made a decision. She drove to Ryan's office. The receptionist looked up politely. Can I help you? I need to speak with Ryan Carter. Do you have an appointment? No. It's urgent. I'm sorry, Mr. Carter is in a meeting. Sarah glanced toward the elevators. If I leave now, Emily's family might die. She couldn't walk away. Not this time. She took a deep breath. Then, before the receptionist could stop her, she stepped into the elevator, unaware that someone was already watching the security cameras. Marcus. He recognized Sarah immediately. His expression darkened. He remembered her from the accident. And now, she was looking for Ryan. Quietly, he picked up his phone. It's starting, he said into the receiver. Move to phase 2. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime. Sarah stepped into the executive floor, trying to steady her breathing. Emily walked beside her, her form faintly shimmering beneath the fluorescent lights. No matter what happens, Emily whispered, don't let Marcus know why you're here. Sarah nodded. Too late. Marcus was already waiting. He leaned casually against the reception desk, holding a cup of coffee as though he just happened to be passing by. His smile appeared effortless. Sarah Collins. She froze. You remember me? Of course I do, Marcus replied. After everything we've both been through. Emily immediately sensed something was wrong. Marcus wasn't surprised to see Sarah. He'd been expecting her. I heard you were looking for Ryan, Marcus continued. I just wanted to ask him a few questions. About Emily? Sarah hesitated. Yes. Marcus lowered his eyes, pretending to be emotional. It was a terrible tragedy. It still doesn't feel real. His performance was flawless. If Emily hadn't known the truth, she might have believed him herself. Sarah forced a sympathetic smile. "I'm sorry for your loss." Marcus nodded. "Thank you." Then his expression subtly changed. "If you don't mind me asking, what exactly did you want to tell Ryan?" Sarah felt Emily's presence beside her. "Don't answer him. I just wanted to ask about the accident." Marcus studied her face. Every tiny movement, every blink. He was searching for something, looking for proof. Finally he stepped aside. Ryan's office is the last door on the left. As Sarah walked away, Marcus quietly removed his phone from his pocket. He typed only 3 words. "She's talking. Today." Then he hit send. Ryan looked exhausted. He hadn't shaved in days. Dark circles hung beneath his eyes. When Sarah entered, he stood politely. "Can I help you?" She closed the door behind her. "My name is Sarah Collins." Recognition flashed across his face. "You were the woman from the accident." Ryan nodded slowly. "I've been meaning to contact you." "I'm so sorry." Sarah swallowed. "There are things you need to hear." Ryan motioned toward a chair. "I'm listening." She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. How could she explain this? "Your dead wife talks to me." No sane person would believe that. Emily stepped closer. "Tell him about the cabin." Sarah frowned. "What cabin?" "The one where he proposed." Images suddenly flooded Sarah's mind. A frozen lake. A wooden dock. Snow falling. A silver ring hidden inside a coffee mug. Emily hadn't told her any of this. Yet somehow, Sarah could see it perfectly. She looked at Ryan. "You proposed at Black Pine Lake." Ryan's face lost all color. "You rented cabin 7. It snowed even though the forecast said it wouldn't. You dropped the ring into the coffee mug because you were too nervous to hold it." Ryan slowly stood. "Who told you that?" Sarah whispered the final detail. "Emily said yes before you even asked." Silence. Ryan staggered backward until he reached his chair. "No one knows that. I never told anyone." Tears filled his eyes. "How?" Sarah looked toward Emily, then back at Ryan. "Because she was there." Ryan didn't speak for nearly a minute. Finally he laughed. Not because anything was funny, because the alternative was impossible. "My wife is dead." "I know. So how could she?" "She needs your help." Ryan looked around the room. "Emily." No answer. Emily stood only inches away. "I'm here," she whispered desperately. "I'm right here." Ryan rubbed his face. "I don't know what's happening anymore." Sarah leaned forward. "Neither do I. But I know one thing. Emily believes someone is trying to kill you." Ryan's expression changed instantly. "Marcus, you already suspect him." Ryan slowly nodded. "I found missing money. Fraud. Offshore accounts. But I haven't found enough evidence." Emily looked toward the office windows. The sun was beginning to set. A cold feeling swept through her. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Across town, Marcus entered an abandoned warehouse near the river. 3 men were already waiting. One unfolded blueprints across an old workbench. Marcus pointed to a photograph. "Ryan's house. I want it to look accidental." One of the men frowned. "What about the kids?" Marcus stared at him. "If they're inside." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The silence answered everything. Even the hired men exchanged uneasy glances. Marcus wasn't trying to scare Ryan. He intended to erase the entire family. Back at the office, Emily suddenly doubled over. Sarah noticed immediately. "Emily." Her outline flickered violently, like a television signal losing reception. Evelyn's voice echoed in Emily's memory. "The dead cannot remain forever." Emily looked up in horror. "I know what he's going to do." "What?" "The house." "He isn't coming after Ryan. He's coming after all of them." Ryan stood immediately. "My boys." He grabbed his car keys. Sarah followed. "I'm coming with you." "No. You're involved now whether you like it or not." Ryan didn't argue. The 3 of them hurried toward the parking garage. Only, Emily stopped walking. She couldn't move. An invisible force held her in place. "No." Sarah turned around. Emily. I'm trapped. What do you mean? Emily looked back toward the office building. I can't leave. Ryan couldn't hear any of it. He was already running toward his truck. Sarah looked desperately at Emily. What do I tell him? Emily closed her eyes, then whispered the only words that mattered. Save my children. The elevator doors closed. Ryan and Sarah sped out of the parking garage toward the suburbs. Emily remained standing alone on the empty executive floor, watching them disappear, praying they wouldn't be too late. Far across the city, a shadowed figure poured gasoline along the back porch of Ryan's home. A lighter clicked open, and the first orange flame touched the wood. The first flame crawled across the porch like a living thing. Within seconds, dry wooden boards crackled beneath the growing fire. The man in the black hoodie stepped back, watching the blaze spread exactly as planned. He pulled out his phone. It's done, he said. Then he disappeared into the darkness. 20 minutes away, Ryan drove faster than he ever had before. Every red light felt like an eternity. Sarah clutched the dashboard as the truck raced through empty streets. Call the police, she shouted. Ryan had already dialed 911. My house is on fire, he yelled into the phone. My sons are inside. The dispatcher asked for his address. Ryan barely finished speaking before hanging up. He couldn't wait. Every second mattered. Inside the house, 8-year-old Ethan woke to the smell of smoke. At first, he thought his younger brother Noah was burning toast in the kitchen. Then he heard the smoke detector. Its piercing alarm echoed through the hallway. Ethan. Noah's sleepy voice came from the next room. I smell something. Ethan opened his bedroom door. Black smoke rolled across the ceiling. His heart nearly stopped. Fire. The boys rushed toward the stairs. But flames had already climbed through the first floor. The only exit was gone. Miles away, Emily felt it. She couldn't see the house. She couldn't hear her children. But something deep inside her soul screamed. They were in danger. She collapsed to her knees inside the empty office. No. She slammed her fists against the invisible barrier trapping her there. Nothing happened. She screamed until her voice disappeared. No one heard her. Ryan's truck finally turned onto his street. His stomach dropped. Orange flames towered above the roof. Neighbors stood outside screaming. Several people were already dragging garden hoses across their lawns. A woman cried as another shouted, "The kids are still inside." Ryan didn't even stop the truck. He jumped out while it was still rolling. Ethan. Noah. A weak voice answered. Dad. Stairs. Ryan pushed forward. The wooden staircase groaned beneath his weight. Halfway up, part of the ceiling crashed behind him. There would be no easy way back. Outside, firefighters finally arrived. Sarah grabbed one of them. My friend is still inside. The captain cursed under his breath. We're going in. 3 firefighters disappeared into the burning house. Upstairs, Ethan held Noah tightly inside their bedroom. The smoke had become almost unbearable. I can't breathe, Noah whispered. Ethan pulled his little brother closer to the window. Dad's coming. Even though he wasn't sure anymore. The bedroom door suddenly burst open. Ryan stumbled through the smoke. Both boys cried at once. Dad. He wrapped them in his arms. We're leaving. He grabbed Noah. Ethan held tightly onto his father's jacket. They hurried toward the staircase. Ryan stopped. The stairs were gone. Only flames remained. There was no way down. Outside, firefighters stretched an emergency rescue ladder toward the second-floor window. One firefighter shouted, "Bring them here." Ryan pushed open the bedroom window. Fresh air rushed inside. Below, dozens of neighbors watched helplessly. Take Noah first, the firefighter yelled. Ryan handed his youngest son into waiting arms. Then Ethan. Both boys reached safety. Ryan climbed onto the windowsill. Just as he prepared to jump, the floor beneath him cracked. The room shifted violently. A burning support beam crashed between him and the window. Ryan was trapped. Sarah watched in horror. No. The firefighters tried reaching him. The fire had become too intense. One of them grabbed the captain. We're losing the structure. Another shouted. The roof's coming down. Ryan looked through the flames toward his sons. They were alive. Safe. He smiled. For the first time since Emily died, he felt peace. "I kept my promise," he whispered. At that exact moment, Emily appeared. Not trapped. Not fading. Standing inside the burning bedroom. She looked exactly as she had on the morning of the accident. Ryan stared at her in disbelief. "Emily." She smiled through tears. "You saved them." Ryan reached toward her. "I thought I'd never see you again." "You weren't supposed to." She gently took his hand. The fire around them seemed to slow. The noise outside disappeared. Everything became quiet. "So this is real?" Emily nodded softly. "It is now." Ryan looked toward the window one last time. "Our boys. They'll be okay. You made sure of that." He smiled. "I missed you." "I know." Emily stepped closer. "You don't have to be afraid anymore." The roof collapsed. Flames swallowed the second floor. Sarah fell to her knees. The firefighters lowered their heads. No one could have survived that. Several minutes later, the fire was finally under control. The house had been destroyed. Ryan's body was recovered near the children's bedroom. The official report called him a hero. Because he was. No one knew what he had seen in his final moments. Only Sarah understood. She quietly looked toward the smoke rising into the night sky. For just an instant, she saw two glowing figures standing together. Emily and Ryan, hand in hand. Then they vanished into the light. But the nightmare wasn't over. Because Marcus was standing across the street, hidden among the crowd, watching, satisfied. He believed every witness had died. He had no idea. Sarah had seen everything. And this time, she intended to make sure he paid for it. 3 days later, the entire town gathered for the funeral. Rain fell in a slow, steady drizzle, soaking the rows of black umbrellas surrounding two polished oak caskets. One belonged to Emily. The other now belonged to Ryan. Their two sons stood silently between relatives, too young to fully understand why both of their parents were gone. Ethan held Noah's hand the entire time. Neither of them cried. It was as if the shock had stolen every tear. Sarah watched from a distance. She couldn't stop thinking about the last thing Emily had said. "Save my children." She had. But now they had no one. Marcus delivered the eulogy. His voice cracked at exactly the right moments. He called Ryan his closest friend. He described Emily as a woman with the kindest heart. Several people wiped tears from their eyes. Sarah felt sick. She was watching a murderer receive sympathy. Even worse, people admired him. When the service ended, Marcus walked over to the boys and knelt beside them. "If you ever need anything," he said warmly, "I'll always be here for you." Ethan simply nodded. But Noah stepped behind his older brother. For some reason, the little boy didn't trust him. Children often notice what adults ignored. That evening, Sarah visited Evelyn again. The old woman was sitting on her porch, as if she had known Sarah was coming. "You couldn't save them both," Evelyn said quietly. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I tried." "I know. But Ryan still died." Evelyn looked toward the sunset. "Sometimes saving someone doesn't mean keeping them alive." Sarah frowned. "I don't understand." "He gave his life so his sons could have theirs. That was the choice fate placed before him." Sarah sat in silence. Then she asked the question she had feared the most. "Will I ever see Emily again?" Evelyn hesitated. "Not the way you did before. The door between worlds is closing." "So she's really gone?" A gentle breeze moved through the trees. Evelyn smiled. "No one who is truly loved is ever completely gone." The next morning, Sarah received an unexpected phone call. It was Detective Daniel Brooks. "I need to speak with you." "About Ryan Carter." Sarah's pulse quickened. "Did something happen?" "We found inconsistencies." "What kind?" "The fire wasn't accidental." Sarah closed her eyes. She already knew. "We'd like you to come to the station." Hours later, Sarah sat across from Detective Brooks inside a small interview room. He placed several photographs on the table. Burn patterns. Gasoline residue. A melted lighter. The fire was deliberately set. Sarah stared at the pictures. "Do you have a suspect?" The detective nodded slowly. "We're looking into Marcus Reed." Her heart skipped. "Why him?" He recently increased the life insurance policies on the company executives. Sarah leaned forward. What? Brooks slid another document across the table. Ryan's signature appeared near the bottom. It looks authentic. But forensic analysts believe it was forged. Sarah whispered. He was planning this for months. Across town, Marcus sat alone in his office. The news had reached him. The police were asking questions. That annoyed him. But it didn't frighten him. Not yet. He opened a hidden compartment beneath his desk. Inside sat a flash drive. It contained everything. Fake contracts, offshore transfers, bribery records, names, dates. Enough evidence to send him to prison for the rest of his life. He smiled. Then he dropped the flash drive into a small metal box. He struck a match. Within seconds, the evidence was burning. No loose ends, he muttered. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. Marcus was too careful, too intelligent. If he'd planned all of this, he wouldn't leave proof lying around. He believed no one else knew where to look. That night Sarah dreamed of Emily one final time. This time there were no words, no warnings, no fear. Emily simply stood beside a large oak tree overlooking a quiet lake. She smiled. Then she pointed toward an old red barn in the distance. Sarah woke instantly. Her heart raced. The image remained perfectly clear. A lake, an oak tree, a weathered red barn. She had never seen that place before, yet somehow felt familiar. The following morning Sarah drove into the countryside. She wasn't sure why. Logic told her she was chasing another impossible vision, but every instinct urged her forward. After nearly an hour, she turned onto an old gravel road. Then she stopped. Across an open field stood a faded red barn. Behind it, a quiet lake. Beside the shoreline, a massive oak tree. Exactly as she had seen it. Sarah stepped out of the car. The wind whispered through the branches. She slowly approached the barn. The wooden door was secured with a rusty chain. But one side had been forced open long ago. Inside, dust covered everything. Broken tools, old furniture, rotting wooden crates. First it looked abandoned. Then she noticed something strange. The dirt floor near the back wall had recently been disturbed. Someone had dug there. Very recently. Sarah knelt down and brushed away the loose soil with her hands. A corner of black plastic appeared beneath the dirt. Her breathing stopped. She pulled harder. A waterproof storage case emerged from the ground. It was locked, heavy, and someone had gone to great lengths to hide it. As Sarah lifted the case from the dirt, she heard the sound of tires crunching across the gravel outside. Someone else had just arrived. She slowly looked toward the barn entrance. A shadow appeared in the doorway. Marcus. He smiled. I was hoping no one would ever find that. He quietly locked the barn door from the inside, then slipped the key into his pocket. There won't be any witnesses this time. The heavy barn door slammed shut. The sound echoed through the empty building. Sarah instinctively stepped backward, gripping the black storage case against her chest. Marcus smiled calmly. There was no anger in his face, only confidence. I have to admit, he said, you've been much harder to get rid of than I expected. Sarah's heart pounded. You killed Emily. Marcus shrugged. Technically. I just made sure her curiosity worked in my favor. You murdered Ryan. He was becoming a liability. And you burned down their home. Marcus sighed. You know what's funny? I never hated Ryan. He was simply standing between me and everything I'd spent years building. Sarah looked toward the locked door. No windows. No escape. Marcus slowly reached into his jacket. A handgun. Small. Black. Silenced. I can't let you leave with that case. Sarah's mind raced. She only needed a few more seconds. If the case really contained evidence, could expose everything. Marcus raised the gun. Put it down. She didn't move. I said, put it down. And said, Sarah hurled the heavy case across the barn. Marcus instinctively turned. The case crashed into a stack of old shelves. Boxes fell. Glass shattered. For a split second, his attention shifted. Sarah ran. Marcus fired. The suppressed shot echoed like a sharp crack. The bullet struck a wooden beam inches from Sarah's head. She dove behind an overturned tractor. Another shot. Splinters exploded around her. Marcus walked forward slowly. You can't hide forever. Sarah searched desperately for anything she could use. An old shovel. A length of chain. Rusty farm equipment. Nothing useful. Marcus was only 20 feet away now. Then, the lights inside the barn flickered. Marcus frowned. The building had no electricity. The air suddenly became cold. Unnaturally cold. Sarah felt it too. A familiar warmth followed. Not around her. Behind Marcus. He slowly turned. No one was there. He laughed nervously. I'm not afraid of ghost stories. A whisper drifted through the barn. So you should be. Marcus froze. He recognized the voice. Emily. No. Another whisper. This one deeper. Ryan. You forgot about us. Marcus spun around wildly. There is nobody here. The shadows inside the barn seemed to move. Not quickly. Not dramatically. Just enough. Enough to make Marcus question his own eyes. His breathing became uneven. This isn't real. The old chain hanging from the ceiling began to sway. Without any wind. Metal scraped softly against metal. Then another sound. Footsteps. Behind him. Marcus fired into the darkness. Nothing. Only echoes answered. Sarah watched in disbelief. She couldn't see Emily or Ryan anymore. But she knew they were there. Not to hurt Marcus. Only to distract him. To give her one final chance. She spotted a rusted emergency release chain, attached to the barn's enormous sliding door. Without hesitation, she pulled it. The ancient mechanism groaned. The massive door rolled open. Bright daylight flooded the building. Marcus turned toward the opening. At that exact moment, several police vehicles raced into the farmyard. Detective Daniel Brooks jumped from the lead SUV. Marcus Reed. Drop the weapon. Marcus looked trapped. His eyes darted between Sarah, the officers, and the open field behind the barn. He made his decision. He ran. Marcus sprinted across the muddy pasture. Detectives chased him on foot. He reached the edge of the lake. There was nowhere left to go. Brooks aimed his weapon. It's over. Marcus laughed bitterly. No, it isn't. He stepped backward toward the water, then stopped. His expression changed. Confusion. Fear. He stared at the lake as though someone stood behind the detectives. No. He whispered. You're dead. No one else saw what Marcus saw. Only him. Two figures. Emily. Ryan. Standing quietly beneath the great oak tree. Neither spoke. Neither moved. They simply watched. Marcus stumbled backward. One more step. The muddy bank collapsed beneath him. He fell into the deep water. The detectives rushed forward. Marcus surfaced once. Twice. Then disappeared beneath the dark lake. Divers searched for hours. They recovered his body just before sunset. The official report listed the cause of death as drowning while attempting to flee arrest. No one mentioned what Marcus claimed to have seen. Later that evening, Detective Brooks opened the black storage case. Inside were hard drives, financial records, forged contracts, offshore account information, burner phones, and handwritten journals. Everything Marcus had tried to hide. Every crime. Every victim. Every lie. The investigation that followed uncovered years of fraud, insurance scams, bribery, arson, and multiple contract killings. Marcus had destroyed countless lives long before he targeted Emily and Ryan. Alas, every victim received justice. 6 months later, Ethan and Noah were living with Ryan's older sister, Rebecca. Their new home wasn't perfect. Nothing could replace their parents. But they laughed again. They played baseball after school. They argued over video games. Slowly, life returned. Sarah visited often. She had become part of their family. One autumn afternoon, they all visited the small cemetery overlooking the hills. Fresh flowers rested beside Emily and Ryan's shared headstone. Ethan smiled softly. I still talk to Mom sometimes. Sarah looked at him. What do you tell her? That we're okay. And that Dad kept his promise. Sarah felt tears fill her eyes. I think they already know. A gentle breeze passed through the cemetery. The branches above them rustled softly. For just a heartbeat, Sarah caught sight of two familiar figures standing beneath an old maple tree. Emily rested her head against Ryan's shoulder. Both were smiling. Then, they slowly faded into the sunlight. Sarah smiled back. She wasn't afraid anymore. Some stories don't end with death. Some promises are stronger than life itself. And sometimes, the people we love never truly leave us. They simply wait until it's finally time to say goodbye.